Welcome to the GOP Holiday Smackdown over Federal Income Taxes edition of our show. I'm Brian Lehrer. Looks like there's finally a decision, actually, a split decision. Today, the GOP reached agreement in principle on a single compromise tax bill that both the House and Senate can vote on next week. If it passes, which is likely but not 100% certain, President Trump will sign it before Christmas, a Christmas present in his view.
The typical family of four earning $75,000 will see an income tax cut of $2,000. So that's $2,000 in their pocket, additional to spend on whatever they want to spend, or they could save the money also.
The tax bill is sweeping new legislation, which will drastically lower taxes on corporations and, in the near term at least, give a break to millions in the middle class. But what will the bill mean for New Yorkers? Reportedly, the latest version now lets taxpayers deduct $10,000 in local and state taxes, or that same amount in property taxes. So now it's less drastic for New Yorkers who pay a lot of taxes here and are used to deducting them. It also drops the top tax rate for the rich or the highest income earners from near 40% to 37%. Senator Chuck Schumer did not like that as a gift to the wealthy.
They reduced the top rate, it's speculated, from 39.6 to 37, benefiting only people who are very wealthy. How is that going to help the middle class? It's not. It hurts them.
And corporate taxes, the rate will drop from 35% to 21%. That's a big drop, though it's a slight adjustment upwards from the 20% the president originally wanted. The bill's still likely to throw millions off Obamacare. And if the economy doesn't expand the way the GOP lawmakers project, the increased deficit will automatically trigger cuts in Medicare and other programs. How might that affect the budgets here in the city, at City Hall, and in Albany? Joining us, Ron Deutsch, Executive Director of the Fiscal Policy Institute, a liberal think tank. Here too, E.J. McMahon, founder of the conservative think tank, the Empire Center for Public Policy. He drafted reforms that became the basis for the tax cuts under Governor George Pataki here in New York, and was an early advocate of the New York State cap on property taxes, which is in effect. And via Skype from Washington, D.C., Howard University professor William Spriggs, who serves as chief economist for the AFL-CIO. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us. We're all digesting this latest version of the tax bill. This seems to be the compromise version that they'll actually vote on. EJ, what do you make of it for New York?
Well, to start with, in fact, as Trump said, actually, about the family of four making $75,000, husband, wife, two children, if they use a standard deduction now, they will save about $2,000. Most New York City residents will get a tax cut from this tax cut. However, the structure of the tax cut still has got two big fundamental flaws for New York, both New York City in particular and New York State in general. It basically repeals the state and local tax deduction, and the capped optional deductions that you referred to actually will not be of much practical use to many people who might think otherwise, because they're only options that you could use if your remaining itemized deductions are big enough to overcome the size of the standard deduction. It gets kind of complicated. For all intents and purposes, as far as any particular piece of property is concerned, it's lost its property tax deduction, and for any particular wage earner is concerned, you've lost the income tax deduction. And actually, the highest earning New Yorkers, in terms of their earned income, people who are the seven-figure working class, if you will, as it's been called, people who have wages and salaries and bonuses in the millions, of whom there are tens of thousands of them in the New York tax base, they will pay higher taxes net as a result of this, even with the cut in the top federal rate.
So, William Spriggs, let me go to you on that. On a national basis, and I guess it's true here in New York too, it's not so much how much money you make, but how you make your money that determines whether you get a tax cut or a tax increase in large measure in this bill, right?
That's right. It's a lottery, and normally when we think of tax reform, we like to think of leveling the playing field so that it doesn't matter how you earn the income. But in this case, it does. So wage income actually is going to be taxed at a higher rate than, or what we like to call earned income, is going to be taxed at a higher rate than unearned income. And that's going to open up all sorts of gamesmanship that has already polluted our workplace, and that's misclassifying workers as independent contractors. This bill would sort of encourage that because that income would be treated differently. So you could be working side by side with someone and yet have different tax rates. And it picks and chooses different winners. New York, of course, is going to be hurt because of the compromise on the personal and state property tax. That only helps reduce the damage by a little bit for New York, not by very much. There's still millions of Americans nationwide who are going to get a tax increase because of that. But there are others who are going to be hurt. If you're a parent and you have older children, so if you don't have children under 17, if you have a child in college, your taxes are going to go up. So that's the oddness of this tax bill. It's
Why
not
is
tax
that? Why that
reform.
in particular? If you have a child in college, your taxes are going to go up. Can you explain that?
It has to do with the personal exemption you can no longer claim for that child, and it has to do with your ability to deduct their college expenses. Those deductions go away in favor of a higher overall deduction. So you end up paying higher taxes if you're a parent right now and in fact, if you're a suburbanite right now in New York and you have a 19-year-old in college, then your taxes are going up immediately, so we can give the richest people on the planet a tax cut. That's what's happening here. And so it attacks our ability to train our future. It attacks working people because even though the wage share of national income is declining, it puts a higher burden on that income than the share of national income that is increasing, which is corporate profits. So it's a very imbalanced approach. It's not really tax reform. It's not really lowering the barrier for everyone. It's really raising barriers specifically aimed at working class people who in 5 years all will see their taxes go up in the name of giving truly trillions of dollars away.
And Ron, let me
won't
jump
see.
in to get the other folks on. And Ron, I'll get to you in a minute. But EJ, as the more conservative-leaning person here, how much of that do you agree with?
A lot, but not all. Big part, the first part of what Professor Spriggs said, I totally agree with. It's very uneven. It's very spotty. It depends on how you make your income and what your family size is and what your age is and what the age of your children are. Most people in general, just out of the broad populace, get a tax cut, but it's very irregular and lumpy, and it's one of the unpretty aspects of this, just from a policy-making standpoint. I think the simplistic, it depends on what, I understand where some of this comes from. Simplistically saying, this is actually a big tax cut for the rich, actually even that depends on, well, which high-income people are you talking about? If, again, hard as it is maybe believe in a common sense, there are people who are salaried people who make with bonus in the low millions, say in New York, if they're so-called earned income, as the professor put it. Those people, if they live in New York City, for the most part, will actually all in, state, federal, and local, pay a tax increase next year. That's because the cut in the top rate, which was meant as a concession to them, a kind of a weird one, frankly, and if this was the intention, still doesn't prevent the loss of the state and local tax deduction from adding to your tax bill. And going forward, it increases to the tax competitiveness issue for New York becomes bigger because the net tax price of living and doing business in New York will be higher net than it's ever been.
Ron, corporate taxes going way down in this from 35 to 21%.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of corporations in New York that employ a lot of people. Can this be good for some of the same New Yorkers who might get socked in other ways?
You know, I think this boils down to just more trickle-down type of economics, and I think that the corporate tax cuts While they're going to benefit corporations, I don't think that that's going to trickle down to the workers in the form of higher wages. And many focus groups and others have looked at this, and executives have basically been saying, the profits that we're going to reap from this, we're going to do stock buybacks and other things, but they're not going to be necessarily reinvesting in their companies. They have that opportunity now with incredibly low interest rates, and they're not necessarily availing themselves of that. But by and large, when you look at this tax cut package, right, I think despite EJ's assertions, I do think that the majority of the benefits from these tax cuts are going to go to the wealthiest, whether it's the reduction in the top PIT rate, whether it's the reduction in the pass-through income rate, which generally benefits hedge funds, private equities, real estate partnerships, those type of ventures, and also the dramatic reduction in the corporate tax rate. I think all benefit the wealthiest, and then quite frankly, many of the benefits that are going to low and moderate income families sunset after a period of time, while these corporate tax cuts and many of these other cuts, including the estate tax cut or elimination, depending on what comes out in the final version here. And remember, these details are still emerging as we speak, literally, so we're not really clear on all of this. But I think one of the even more detrimental impacts on New York potentially is the elimination of the individual mandate under the ACA. And that could, in fact, by 2025, throw about 843,000 New Yorkers off of health care. So,
now, why would it do that? Because one of the arguments for it is they're not eliminating the subsidies, they're eliminating the mandate. So the people who don't want to buy insurance don't have to buy insurance.
The healthier people will come out of the pool,
Right.
and then that will drive up premiums for everybody else and throw people off. So. It's going to be problematic.
Did you want to disagree with that briefly?
Well, a point about the corporate tax cut. President Obama was seeking a corporate tax cut. There's actually the broadest bipartisan agreement on tax policy there is in Washington, or was on the need to reform the corporate tax and lower the corporate tax rate on corporations.
To compete with companies in other countries.
There was that there are too many loopholes, that the corporate tax code is cluttered with loopholes and exceptions, and the rate's too high.
But that's the liberal pushback.
But that's misleading. The Obama plan was that would be revenue neutral. This is not revenue neutral.
Well, you're right.
This is a cut in corporate taxes.
Right. Understood. I'm just saying the concept of reducing the corporate tax rate as part of a corporate tax reform in 1980, if you want to say, hearkening back to the 86 style reform where you broaden the base and lower the rate.
Yeah, but
that was
again,
a starting point.
That's tax reform.
Right.
This is a tax cut.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just explaining that Ron was attacking corporate tax cuts as corporate tax cuts, and I was saying reducing the corporate tax rate is something on which there's broad agreement.
Right, but the effective rate for many of these big Fortune 500 companies is far lower than even the lowest amount that they're going down to now of 22%.
So, Professor Spriggs, explain what President Obama did support and what kind of a corporate tax rate cut, which could have been, I think, to about this same percentage, might have been implemented under a more Democratic Party version.
Well, you can't cut it to 20% because then it's a tax cut. You could lower the corporate tax rate and get rid of all the deductions. And if you did that revenue neutral, you could have a lower corporate tax rate. But you can't get it to 20% without actually cutting revenue. And then you have to get it from somewhere else. And the somewhere else they're getting it from is out of working class people. This is a redistribution from workers who already have a declining share of national income to corporations who already have a rising share of national income. And corporations are already running record levels of profit. So it's not that we are running an economy that hampers their ability to be profitable. Those profits aren't spent on higher wages. They aren't spent on investment at the level that you would imagine at this point in a recovery. Instead, because workers aren't seeing wages and we don't see broadly shared prosperity, companies don't see their customer base increasing, and corporations have been spending the money on stock buybacks and dividends and mergers and acquisitions, because that's the only way they can make money if they don't raise wages so that they can get a bigger customer base.
Ron, the Medicare piece that I mentioned in the introduction, if the deficit is bigger than the Republicans hope it will be, if it's what the Joint Committee on Taxation in Congress projected that it would be with a certain assumed economic growth, if it doesn't grow faster than that, then Medicare would automatically be cut. President Trump ran on, I won't cut your Social Security or your Medicare.
Medicare, right. So yeah, that's going to be a problem. And then you've already heard, the leaders in both the House and the Senate talk about the fact that, we're going to have to close this $1.5 trillion deficit by cutting programs and services that people care about. So that's going to be pretty detrimental to New York when we're talking about, we've already seen the House budget, we've seen a Senate version budget, and they're talking about trillions of dollars in cuts to programs and services that mostly low and middle income New Yorkers depend on. So this notion that somehow, this is going to be good for middle-class New Yorkers or lower-income New Yorkers, I don't think, anything could be further from the truth. And I think what we're going to see here is a ballooning of income inequality in New York, which we already have the worst income inequality of any state in the nation right now.
I would push back on one aspect of this, because I actually am in strong agreement and have been saying all along, I don't like the elimination of the state and local tax deduction. I think the whole process has been a mess and has gotten worse as time goes on. It's a mess. It's too complicated. It's a joke to call it simplification. Having said all that, I think it's wrong to suggest that this is that in a year-to-year basis that real-world people think about, as opposed to the bizarro universe 10-year horizon congressional budgeting accounting rules.
Right, you say this might happen in 2025.
This is going to expire in 8 years. This is going to do this, and it all adds up to that. In the first instance, working class people are not funding the corporate tax cut. Actually, it's actually the main payer net is the elimination of itemized deductions in general and of the state and local tax deduction in particular, which is mainly upper income people. To a great degree, what's going on here, I'm not completely disagreeing with Professor Spriggs or even with Ron, but I'm taking a different angle on this, is that ironically, there's also a big money exchange going on within the upper income quintile and the upper 10%, where people who are high income in high income states are subsidizing a big tax cut for a lot of high income people in non-high income states. Right. So in effect, the millionaire in New York is subsidizing a big tax cut for millionaires in Texas, and both of them, if they own a pass-through business, are getting a tax cut, while their neighbor, whoever that is, or the person they play golf with, who has the exact same high income, if his or her life is structured in a different way, they're getting no tax cut or less of a tax cut. That's the weirdness of this
Right.
of this whole thing.
And the whole reason that they were looking to eliminate the SALT deduction is basically because they were saying, we're tired of subsidizing high tax states.
Well,
like
which was a
New York.
baloney line.
Right, which is a baloney line.
It was the
because
Willie
New York-
Sutton
right.
School of tax
New York
policy.
is
That's
already
where the
providing the
money was.
federal government
Right.
$48 billion more a
Yeah.
year than we're getting back in
Right.
services.
SALT, for people who don't know, is state and local taxes
Right.
acronym.
Right.
So we're still
Right.
talking about
Eliminating
the same
this
thing.
SALT doesn't
But from
make
a
your blood pressure go
progressive
down.
standpoint, and you work for a progressive think tank,
Yes.
wouldn't you want to see the rich subsidize the poor? Isn't that a lot of the point of taxation from a progressive point of view?
I think-
So if New York is a wealthy state and Alabama, just take a random state, I don't know if it was in the news recently, is a lower income state, wouldn't it be social justice, in your view, for New Yorkers to pay a lot more than they get back relative to other states?
I think when you have a progressive income tax structure, as we do currently, then that's what's going to occur, and that's fine. But the reality is we shouldn't, be hurt in this process as well, so that the elimination of SALT is going to have a damaging impact on New York and have a whole host of other unintended consequences, I think, across the board. So, but, the reality is to me that this tax bill, they want to profess it to be a middle-class tax cut package, and the rhetoric just doesn't match the reality. If we want to really help the middle class, we need to be looking at investing in the middle class, right? When did we see the greatest expansion of the middle class this country's ever seen? It was after World War II, when we had things like the GI Bill that helped people buy homes, start businesses, go to college. Those were the investments that had a high rate of return and really developed the middle class in this country. Now all that's gone away, and what we see is the middle class just keeps shrinking.
Professor Spriggs,
And these taxes are aimed against having that happen.
Right.
especially since you're in DC, I wonder if you could give us some thoughts on the political timing of how this takes effect. Is it supposed to take effect immediately, like when we do our taxes this coming April for the 2017 tax year? Some of this will take effect, or is it a year later? I'm sure they would want a, what a lot of people might see as a positive impact immediately before the 2018 midterm elections. What can you tell us? Professor
I
Spriggs?
don't know that that's clear yet. It would be to their benefit to start it sooner, but again, you're going to get a lot of people angry because a lot of people, around 10% of the American people, get an immediate tax increase, and they're going to question, why am I getting a tax increase? They're going to be very upset. For working people, if they get rid of the mandate under the Affordable Care Act, you're going to create such uncertainty in the health insurance market that most people are going to see their health premium go up by much more than this tax cut. They're going to be very upset immediately. So on that, you're going to make a good 40% of the American people very angry very quickly. The cuts that the working and lower class families will get aren't that big, and they will be upset by lots of the ways in which this may play out. If states decide that with the lack of SALT, they aren't going to make the continued investment in restoring K through 12 education or in the investments that got cut to higher education, families will see college tuitions go up. All of these things will offset the measly little tiny cut that people at the bottom are going to get, and that sunset, and they're going to understand that billions of dollars went to the top. So yes, if they do it sooner, some people will say, oh, I'm glad I got $15, and then when their health insurance premium goes up by 20, they
They'll
won't
have that
understand that they got a
sticker
tax.
shock. Ron, I think I understand that. In a way, it's two-tiered. So it really takes effect for the 2018 tax year. So it's not what you're going to put on your 1040 form this coming April.
Right.
But since the new tax rates will take effect January 1st, if you have a paycheck and you get withholding out of your paycheck, and if you're going to get a tax cut, you'll see that taxation go down. You'll see a little more in your take-home pay starting January 1.
Right. So I think there'll be some benefits potentially to some individuals prior to the 2018 election, but the reality is that this, the 2018 election, most people aren't going to feel the impact of these either tax cuts or tax increases till after that, probably. So, we're going to see what happens in 2018. If the pendulum swings back the other way, much of this could be undone. So.
Is there an effect, EJ, you two are based in Albany.
Yeah.
Is there going to be an effect immediately on the New York State budget? Do revenues change to the state for the things that Professor
there's
Spriggs
already
was
been an
talking
effect.
about, like K through 12 education?
Well, there's been an effect in this way. There's so much uncertainty, and as the reports of what's in the tax plan on the corporate side, because really this is a corporate tax cut at its core. It's not about the middle class, who are getting a tax cut for the most part in the short term, but it's really about the corporate tax cut. There's so much uncertainty about how this will play out, especially with the so-called pass-through companies, that we've actually seen an otherwise inexplicable drop way below projections in our personal income tax receipts among payers who are in that category, this sort of core group of high-income payers who own or are partners or participants in businesses who are clamoring. They're all calling their tax advisors and saying, what do I do? Do we reinvest in the business this year or next year? Do we buy equipment instead of lease? Is that going to be favored? Do we hire employees instead of contract them? Will that be favored? The plan's different. They don't know. So what happened was there's the thought, and the budget division said this for the governor, there's uncertainty, the money's parked on the sidelines. That has held down tax receipts. In the longer term, the issue is, and part of this is be another discussion, is we depend really heavily on high income payers. So the $1 million earners pay 40% of our income tax, which is our largest tax source. It's been a lot of the marginal growth in the tax. We have this still technically temporary so-called millionaire tax due to expire in 2 years that raises $4 billion a year from the same people who are the core people who actually pay more effectively after this because they're not going to get any deduction for that anymore. So that becomes a big issue in how you deploy your tax policy. There will be scores and dozens of provisions of the state and city corporate tax code and income tax, individual income tax code that need to be adjusted to reflect whatever changes are made in the final bill in DC.
All of which is to say, we really don't know, and they're going
No,
to have to
it's
scramble over the next year
it's going to
figure
be.
it
It's
out.
very. Here's the
lot of
safest thing to say.
speculation.
It's disruptive, in whether it's ultimately disruptive in a very negative way, a mildly negative way, or even a mildly positive way
To be
remains to be
determined.
seen.
What about the city budget? Any difference?
I think, the city budget relies on federal dollars that are coming in, and maybe there won't be a huge difference as a result of the tax changes, but there's certainly going to be a big change as a result of a lot of these cuts that are going to be made to programs and services. So, we know that 69% of the New York City Housing Authority budget comes from the federal government. So there's a huge question mark right there. What's going to happen with that funding stream? But the reality is that, I think this supply side trickle down type of economic tax package is just bad for New York, and it's going to continue to exacerbate income inequality. And as EJ points out, yes, the wealthy pay a lot of income taxes in New York, but the top 1% in New York City gets about 43% of all the income. So,
Professor Spriggs, as somebody who does economics for the AFL-CIO, any particular impact on organized labor that you're projecting here?
Well, this is going to hurt workers in the public sector, as it's going to hurt all citizens, because not only is there going to be turmoil at that level, but changing what's going to be taxable income from the federal side normally passes through to what's taxable income at the state side. So this is going to raise huge challenges at the state and local level to make the reinvestments that we need and to get public school teachers back in the classroom. We are still down thousands of teachers from the peak in 2008. This continues to hurt our ability to train our children, our future. And again, by differentiating between earned income and this idea that we're going to have workers misclassified, that hurts. It's going to throw a big uncertainty into the labor market by increasing the incentives to have more of a gig economy than having an economy that's built on earned income.
We are out of time, but I propose that we all meet after the show and figure out how to reincorporate ourselves as independent contractors. And we can hire a lawyer to help us figure out all the new tax loopholes that we haven't even been able to read yet in this bill, but that will inevitably be there. So
If we
thank
could
you all,
afford it.
all very much for an important conversation. Professor Spriggs, thanks for joining from Washington. And
Thanks for
that's
having-
our program for today. We're here each week, midweek, at this hour, at the costly intersection of city politics and everyday life. If you missed any part of the program, find us at CUNY.tv, and do tune into my daily radio program, 10 a.m. to noon on WNYC, 93.9 FM, and AM 820. I'm Brian Lehrer. Thanks for watching.